All right, Bills come out of their bye week with pressure on as they try to make a playoff push. Little room for error, but of course, all that overshadowed with what happened off the field last week with Von Miller and what happened between him and his pregnant girlfriend. We got a lot to dive into right now on the Buffalo End Zone podcast. I'm Kevin Carroll.
And I'm Jon Scott. Not flying solo, Kevin. It's kind of been a weird little run we've had here. I had to do the show because you decided to be with your family for Thanksgiving.
Rude of me.
Very rude. Then we had a couple where we were not in studio together. I had Adam Schefter on the podcast yesterday, and I guess we have to now deal with you again.
Yep, I'm back, baby. Little Frank Costanza for you. But yes, a lot to live up to, John, after the bang-up job you did with Adam Schefter, as there are plenty of storylines surrounding the Bills coming out of the bye week. Like I said, both on the field and off the field. I think the jumping-off point here is addressing what's going on with Von Miller. The way the Bills are handling Von Miller isn't going over well. You see, for the most part, on social media. He did not practice today, but is expected to practice, and from early comments in the week, John, looks like is set to suit up on Sunday.
We'll start with the practice element of this. Sean McDermott says it was predetermined before this incident occurred during the bye week that they were going to get Von on a plan similar to a year ago, where prior to the injury, he took a veteran rest day on Wednesdays and would practice fully on Thursdays and go out the rest of the week. I'll leave that up to you and anyone else to decide whether or not that's authentic, it's truthful.
Too much of a coincidence. Don't buy it.
I think that is fair, but you could take Sean McDermott for however you want to take Sean McDermott. So that is why, according to the Bills head coach, why Von Miller was not out on the practice field on Wednesday, but is expected to return in a full capacity on Thursday. Now, as for the organization's response, Brandon Beane kind of impromptu spoke with the media because someone needed to address this from an organizational standpoint. He was going to be the person who did that. Basically, the long and short of it, from about 20 minutes or so of him talking about it, Kevin, is I'd say the Bills seem to almost take like a step back approach, let the league and authorities go through this, and basically until they make some sort of a conclusion, they're going to let the process play out, and Von Miller's going to be part of the team. Do you think that's the right way they should be handling it?
I've gone back and forth on it. So first, when I was asked what I think should happen, I think the Bills, from what we know from what happened with the fact that his girlfriend then took back the accusation that she made, but again, it's already out there. It was reported to the police. You can take that back all you want, but it was reported to the police. But I think with things still open, in the league not stepping in, I just find it hard for the Bills then to say, well, we're just going to make our own decision. But I flip-flop back and forth on it throughout the day. I'm a big innocent till proven guilty guy, not guilty, go prove that you're innocent kind of guy. And with everything involved in this situation, I think the Bills approach this the way I thought that they would approach this. But I also have this feeling that as we move on towards Sunday, that this might get backtracked by the time game time rolls around on Sunday afternoon. And I don't want to say they'd lie and say, well, he suffered a setback practicing this week. I just think maybe cooler heads prevail at some point, and someone there says, this is a bad look for our team. And maybe the right thing to do is where we're at is to not dress him on Sunday.
I want to get to the playing element of it. But first, I think what is so much at the forefront of this from a public standpoint and optic standpoint is just a year ago they dealt with Matt Araiza. And we're not saying this situation is the same as the other, but it's a player being accused of something, an investigation ongoing, and we saw how the Bills handled that a year ago. They really seem to fumble things by saying, based upon the information that we have gathered, we feel confident with what we know right now. And then a few days later, they had the preseason game. They didn't dress him. They sent him home. He was released by the team, all of this stuff. And then obviously it played out in a certain capacity where he was ultimately found to not be part of the heart root of these allegations. Brandon Beane said a few times that based on their conversations with Von and what they know of Von and kind of where things currently stand, that's why they feel comfortable with allowing him to still be around the team. So we've heard that from them in one instance in the past year or so.
Right.
Again, not apples to apples, but in a player dealing with a serious off-the-field incident and allegations and legal issue, and we saw kind of how that trickled out after there. I think it's natural and honestly right to bring your mind back to how this organization has handled an incident of some capacity in the same realm recently, and they did not do it well. And I think it's natural to say, well, would you be operating differently if this was not $20 million a year future Hall of Famer Von Miller, as opposed to sixth-round rookie punter with the way you're acting in the short term?
Right, and that's fair. And the biggest criticism I have heard today from Bills Mafia type of people, fans, is A, Von Miller's history of being accused of stuff before, that when Brandon Beane says, how could you say by his character that because he did this before? I take a different look at that. Like, you could have known someone did something in the past, but from your dealings with them, from when you started dealing with them till now, I think that's a justified statement by Brandon Beane, that he can only go off of how Von Miller acts around him. And if personally his actions or interaction with Von leads him to say that, I don't have a huge problem with that at all, despite what the history was. The history wasn't when he was with the Bills. This is the here and now. Everything is different to me. Everything needs to be treated different. So I think that's a bit of a leap to jump that far.
That's fair. I mentioned the circumstances are different in terms of the level of player.
Mm-hmm.
You had a sixth-round rookie punter in Matt Araiza, and you have a future Hall of Famer in Von Miller. But here's the interesting thing that I've also seen some people talk about. He's not a future Hall of Fame caliber player right now. He's actually been almost non-existent, I would say, since returning from the ACL injury this season. And this is kind of the separate part of the conversation. You're not saying, well, this gives them the opportunity to not play him. I think,
right.
But if they didn't play him and did decide to take a stand, I don't think the Bills are a worse defense if that was it. I think, frankly, as crazy as it sounds, from strictly a football standpoint, not bringing into the off-the-field stuff, but strictly from a football standpoint, if you're telling me I want Von Miller or Kingsley Jonathan, it is insane to say at this point in time. But I think I would honestly feel that Kingsley Jonathan, or even more reps for Shaq Lawson, makes the Bills' defense better than the way Von Miller's playing right now.
Totally agree with you on that when it comes to the on-the-field stuff, is that, first of all, they were using Von very sparingly throughout games, and it looked to me he had trouble getting home, as they say, with the pass rush. And the other guys might provide just a better chance to get to the quarterback at this point than Von Miller. So it does make you wonder if, on top of what I said earlier, where I feel they're going to back off of leaning towards him playing, I think that's an easy out for them as well, is just the performance so far. I don't think he helps them that much as far as in a must-win game against the Kansas City Chiefs, as football goes.
I'm looking at his snap counts here. There was that one game at New England where he only played 6 snaps. It was his third game returning. Beyond that, 20, low 20s is kind of where he's been at, which is around 30% of the snaps. We understand it on a rotational basis. The top guys on the defensive line, 50, 55, 60%. So he's maybe playing half the snaps, or he would gain maybe 10 more snaps a game if he was full go and fully in the mix is at the top of the pecking order of their defensive end rotation. This is an interesting, again, it's two elements of the conversation. Mm-hmm. It's part of a conversation that we've had already of where is Von? You didn't expect him to just pop off the PUP list and be great, but I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in at this point, he doesn't have a sack. He has like 1 or 2 tackles. Like he needs to be better, even in a more limited role, even understanding that he's a 34-year-old coming off major knee surgery. He still needs to be better. And then there's the legal situation plus his dip in caliber of play is what is the future of Von Miller with the Buffalo Bills? And Brandon Beane says if things happen to turn on the legal side of things, the Bills would do the right thing, and cap ramifications probably be damned. But right. The reality is I just don't think they have wiggle room with the way the contract is structured, whether it be based upon off-the-field issues or his on-field performance. I just think they're stuck with Von at least through the 2024 season.
Now, as you were talking to Adam Schefter, NFL insider for ESPN, I think you were wearing that same shirt.
I actually was thinking this. No, this is a nice sweater because it's frigid as heck down in Orchard Park.
Yeah.
That was a hoodie yesterday. But I'm looking in the camera. I'm like, wow, this looks incredibly similar.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I wear this shirt 9 times out of 10, this hoodie. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was talk when you were talking to him that this might be something that's not taken care of by the end of this season. It might roll into the off season. And if that happens, what do the Bills do the rest of the year? Even if they hold him out one game, like eventually you would have to start getting him in the mix.
Well, in the legal process, does it ever work quickly?
Right.
No. Investigations take time. There's a lot of stuff that is far beyond our comprehension because we're stupid to really even get into it and understand. But I think, if you're thinking this year, I mean, we also just understand, like, these even suspensions from the league for contract, the character policy or whatever it is. I mean, that stuff it's weird and dumb the way that it ultimately comes down. You could get arrested for a DUI and you don't get suspended for another 18 months or things like that. So I think any sort of ramifications from the league based upon this incident, should they ever come down, or something we're probably talking about not until 24.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that's gonna be taken care of anytime soon. So it's gonna keep going on, John. It's gonna keep playing out. The Bills going into the bye week, the whole talk was, well, you got 5 games left. You're sitting at 6-6. And again, I was saying to myself driving in, it seems like since 13 seconds happened that game, or maybe it was before, but it just seems like something happens with the Bills that just gives you every reason that a season should be derailed, be it Matt Araiza, be it DeMar Hamlin. Something happens to this team ever since what was thought as a blown opportunity to get to the AFC Championship presented itself, that you have stuff during the offseason. You have stuff during the regular season. Trey White goes down. Von Miller goes down. Trey White goes down again. Now off-field stuff with Von Miller. The Matt Araiza stuff. It almost seems like this team can't get out of their own way when it comes to what the ultimate goal is as we hit the home stretch of the season with 5 games to go.
I always wondered when I first got here and was covering the Bills in 2014 and 15 and 16, what would it be like covering a good football team? We've seen some people we know working here in sports in either the Buffalo or Rochester market and move on to other markets, friends in Baltimore or Kansas City or other places, and they're obviously covering successful football team. I'm like, what is that? There was always this drama around the Bills, and they weren't even good. They were average, and there was just all these shenanigans and things not really about football. Then obviously they break the drought in 17. 18's this transition year, but since 19, you're right, it was all about, you're just talking about this team winning football games. There wasn't much outside of those walls. And the past year and a half, 2 years, it's still a good football team. I guess some would debate that this year, but there's so much more other stuff piled on top of it that factors in beyond just the offensive line isn't playing well, the wide receivers aren't catching passes. There's a lot of other things that are in the mix in the bowl to make the recipe of the Bills season the past few years. It's an interesting thing, and it's also seemingly uncharacteristic and counter to the very process-oriented and insulated nature that Sean McDermott operates this organization from the head coaching position.
So the process to get where the team got to was fine. It's once you got there that it's just not fine anymore. We've talked about that before when we talked about Sean McDermott being on the hot seat when the bye week started. But again, all that being said, John, there's games to be played. I think Sean McDermott running the defense, I think the defense has looked a lot better than it has in years past when McDermott wasn't the one calling the defense. But here you are in a must-win game, and you're coming off a game against the Eagles where, once again, as good as the defense is shown to be, it's not there when it needs to be there at the end of games. And now you have the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City coming up. And say what you want about both teams struggling, you can't overlook that at the end of this game, if Patrick Mahomes has the ball in his hand and they're within a field goal, that they're tying the game up.
This team has not given you any reason to not doubt them. I mean, in every scenario of, I trust them to do the right thing. I trust them to overcome the adversity. I trust them to make the plays when the plays need to be made to win the game. They have shown this entire season they're going to go on the wrong side of that conversation, the wrong side of that outcome. I'll say this. I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes' game log against the Bills. He's cooked them in the playoffs. But if we're talking regular season, the Bills have won the last two. Mahomes has been fine. Let's see, you go back to 2020, which was that weird game where the Bills basically let them run the ball in Orchard Park. It was COVID year.
Yeah.
He was 21 of 26, 225, but it was a very efficient. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I believe, had a big game in his rookie season. One of the few, right? Because it's been kind of worked out. Then they win in that thunderstorm lengthened, Sunday Night Football, I believe it was, in 2021. Mahomes, 272, 2 touchdowns, but they got 2 picks. He threw 2 picks last season in the regular season game, did go for 338. But remember Taron Johnson with the critical interception in one of those games. And Von Miller had a critical sack, I believe it was obviously last year, late in the game. They showed that they have a way, and McDermott, and I guess you would say Leslie Frazier, in these regular season games that have handled the Chiefs' prolific offense pretty well. They've scored 20 points in each of these last 2 games in the regular season where the Bills have beat them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in our discussion with McDermott, we feel overall we really like what he's done with the defense, even considering the injuries that they've been dealt. I think he's done a good job. You obviously just can't say, well, this worked in 2021, this worked in 2022, so it'll work in 2023. But I think the Bills' defense absolutely can match up with this Chiefs' offense, especially considering what we've seen from Kansas City's offense, especially late.
Yeah, and aside from Travis Kelce, the weapons for Mahomes aren't there like they have been in the past, or aren't performing like you need your pass catchers or your running back to perform in these big games. So while here in Buffalo we can poo-poo all over the Bills and how their season is going, it's not like the Chiefs are running away with things like we've expected them from the past, John. And judging from the injury report on a Wednesday leading up to the game, it looks like defensive-wise the Bills are a little bit healthier, as you would expect coming off the bye week going into this game against the Chiefs with, I know it looks like Taylor Rapp will be back in the mix.
Everyone was full go.
Yeah.
Everyone, that includes Dawson Knox's 21-day window coming back off of injured reserve from a wrist injury is open. Kyer Elam, kind of surprising, his 21-day window coming off IR with an ankle injury, also open. The only player on the Bills who was listed on the injury report that was not a full participant was Vaughn as a veteran rest day. So all things considered, unless it's the Milanos, the Tre'Davious Whites, the Daquan Jones, who we know are basically lost for the season, the team's completely healthy. So that's an encouraging sign. And then, honestly, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, it's early again. But Isaiah Pacheco, he got rolled up on, did not participate with a shoulder injury. Donovan Smith is an offensive lineman. He has a neck injury. I don't know if he's going to play. Jerick McKinnon missed the last game. He was limited. Rasheed Rice, full participant but listed. It's also December.
Right.
But I want to get to the weapons part of the Kansas City offense that you mentioned, because I've watched some work and seen some things from people I know who cover the team in Kansas City. And it's not funny, but it's interesting. The wide receiver conversation and the lack of weapons is something I see in their little clips. How it's basically they're banging their head on the table saying, we've been having this conversation since the very beginning of the season and nothing is changing. And I'm sitting there thinking of our shows and saying, how many times have we had conversations in the past year and a half of saying, well, they have Stephon Diggs. Well, they have Travis Kelce. Who in the heck else is going to do something? Right. I think the Bills feel better and look better and have shown that they're in a better spot in the totality of their offense than the Kansas City Chiefs are right now. It's Travis Kelce leading the way, 74 catches, 813, 5 touchdowns. Then it's Rasheed Rice, rookie, who's playing well, 52, 591, and 5 touchdowns. There's no way in hell you would get their number 3 receiver in terms of receiving yards. Pass catcher.
Sky Moore.
No.
Dang it.
Justin Watson.
Who?
Exactly. 332 on 20 receptions. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, boy, is that guy seemed to find himself on the wrong end of some critical plays.
Right.
They're not the same caliber player, although they're probably paid the same about now. Gabe Davis always seems to find himself kind of in the mix of some critical moments that don't seem to go the right way outside of 13 seconds game.
Right.
Valdez-Scantling, 17 for 230, 73 and a touchdown. I mean, that guy's getting paid to be the number 2. Noah Gray, 22 for 246. Then you get to Sky Moore, 21 for 244. Like, that guy is not part of the mix. Mm-hmm. And I saw some people show that on that late Mahomes interception to the sideline against, who were they playing? Green Bay, that he stopped his route. And this is a former second-round pick. This is a guy that he hasn't worked out.
Was that intentional grounding?
No, it was intercepted is what it was. Kadarius Toney, he really only shined in the Super Bowl. That's a first-round talent they got from the Giants, and it's not like the Giants needed to get rid of talent at the wide receiver position, and they shipped him away. These are the guys, Mecole Hardman they brought back. Like, they don't have anyone to threaten you outside of Travis Kelce, and the Bills, I think, have done a good job in their secondary of even mitigating and handling wide receiver groups that are good.
Right.
Whether it be Jamar Chase had a low game. Now T. Higgins played pretty well. A.J. Brown didn't really pop off, but Devontae Smith was decent. Mike Evans, I don't really think did anything. Godwin was okay against
Look at the
him.
Dolphins game.
Correct.
I mean, given Trey White was there.
But I think Rasul Douglas has come in and done a great job. And obviously now I think it'll be interesting to see how Sean McDermott approaches. Everything runs through Travis Kelce. Who do you put on him? Is it Taron Johnson? Is it bracket coverage? Is it you run these 3 safety looks and maybe Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde is one-on-one? That'll be an intriguing matchup, especially considering I don't know if you feel the threat from the other people at the wide receiver spot on the outside.
At least it doesn't look like it to the eye test from the last couple of games, from the losses that they've had. You talk about some of the Bills' losses. They lost to the Broncos, too. I don't think anyone pictured them losing to the Packers over the weekend. So they've had some tough losses themselves.
My wife was one of 4 left in a loser pool.
Oh, boy.
She picked the Green Bay Packers to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. And she ended up losing, obviously. She comes so close all the time.
Is that a bet with the heart, or was it?
It was certainly the best option that was available at the time. But you're right. And Kansas City, just in general, they've lost 2 of their last 3. They blew the lead they had against Philadelphia. Have we heard that before? They were really never really in it against Green Bay. They just didn't look great. They didn't blow away the Raiders in between there.
Raiders were up 14-0. I thought they were going to run away with that one.
And then before their bye week, remember over in Germany, they sucked out and held on because of a defensive touchdown against the Miami Dolphins. Then they lost to the Denver Broncos. So they started 6-1. They've gone loss, win, loss. And again, that includes they lost to Denver, Philadelphia, Green Bay, and almost arguably could have lost to the Miami Dolphins. They're the most vulnerable version of the Kansas City Chiefs we have seen in the Patrick Mahomes era.
Yeah, and I think on both sides of the ball, and I think there's, as far as offensively goes, John, one of the things that I had brought up is when Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator, was it going to hurt him or benefit him to get those 2 games under his belt and then have the bye week? Because came out against the Jets and against the Eagles, and again, that Eagles game is the Bills' offense looked so good when they needed to be in that game. So the offense looks like that Bills offense that everyone was expecting through those 2 games, even though you lose in overtime. So now here you come out of the break, and I still think you have to expect more of the same. I think Brady's doing a good job in getting this offense to run the way we were all we were all expecting it to go, at least from the start of the season. I need some water.
Yeah, they look like the offense of old, the offense that everyone expected them to be. Josh Allen looks like the Josh Allen of old. He 3 touchdowns and an interception against the Jets in the first game with Joe Brady at the helm. He was sensational against Philadelphia outside of the interception, which honestly, upon further review, just a hell of a play by the corner. I mean, it was a great read to get off his man, undercut it. I mean, he just read the quarterback. And sometimes that's going to happen. That's a good player out there on the outside. 339, 2 touchdowns. And, of course, he ran it phenomenal, 9 for 81 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it was the full Josh Allen superhero-type performance that they're going to need for 5 straight weeks and then getting into the playoffs should they do that. Josh has also gotten it done against Kansas City in the past. To me, though, Kevin, this is a different conversation around the entire Kansas City team because, while I think it's the most vulnerable that they've been, certainly offensively, the most flawed offensively that they have been, defensively, it's this shift to where they're ironically winning games and because of their strong, much improved defense.
Okay. I mean, it's weird when stuff like that happens to a team with a Patrick Mahomes on there.
I mean, they're fourth in the league in yards allowed total at 297. They're only allowing 17.3 points a game. That's third in the league. I mean, I know just looking all-encompassing, but again, they beat the Miami Dolphins because of the defensive touchdown. They are a team that defensively, they're more with Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid. Their defense is honestly the strong suit of this team.
To let Josh be Josh, the Josh Allen experience, the Josh Allen that leapt over a Kansas City Chiefs player a few years ago and does all that stuff. And we feel that that's where the offense is right now with Josh Allen running things, really making decisions to take off with the ball instead of passing it and being more of that. Does that benefit the Bills going into this game against an improved Chiefs defense? Or, I mean, God forbid, you really don't want to see them rein Josh back in after the last couple of weeks. So you would expect more of the same with, if Allen has a running lane, he's running with the ball. I mean, he's the offense.
I think the situation of where they put themselves, they're 6-6. Some people say 10, some people say 11th. The standings that honestly doesn't matter at this point, but whatever. They have a mountain to climb of teams to get into the playoffs. They probably got to go at worst. I don't think 3-2 gets them in because I think they got to get 10 wins. I think they lose out on a tiebreaker at 9-8. So they got to go 4-1 in their final 5 games. So the best course for this team to try to do that is just to cut Josh Allen loose and let him play free.
Yeah.
And I think that's why against the Jets he was effective. It's certainly why they should have won the game in Philadelphia, is because Josh was just doing Josh. I mean, when you reel him in and put him in a box and don't let him be the dual threat dynamic player that he is, then you're cutting his legs out from under him, no pun intended. Because how many times do you either see Allen take off and he gains the yards with his legs, or I even think he might have done this against Kansas City or some teams, he gets to like the millimeter line either on the sideline or at the line of scrimmage, and he cuts it loose, and someone's free up the field. I mean, just dial it up if you're Joe Brady. Let Josh be Josh. Let him play with a clear mind, whatever that what was that nonsense he was saying he was doing earlier, like calm chaos, I forget.
Calm anger,
no.
Calm chaos might have been it.
No, it was something that was stupid. Whoever told him to do that, don't ever listen to them again. Just let Josh cook, I guess, is probably the best way to go.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that when, like, one of my big gripes in the early part of the season before Joe Brady took over was that indecision you would see in Josh when he rolled out of the pocket. Like, almost like, I know I could get the first down, but I'm being told I got to pass the ball here and not take a risk. It seems like that's gone now. That opens up the passing plays there with defenders having to make decisions to come up at Josh or to stay in coverage. And Allen being able to spread the ball around more. And Khalil Shakir, I think, has turned into a really nice player on this offense as the season has gone on. And I think he's gained a ton of Josh Allen's confidence.
Which then opens the conversation to, if Dawson Knox returns this week or whenever he returns, what does the offense look like? Because they've made this shift of getting away from 12 personnel, not playing with 2 tight ends regularly, bringing Shakir into the mix. He's so solid and reliable and seems to always make a play when called upon, and it's basically been a lot of Diggs, Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid. And their offense has looked good, by even in moments at the end of Ken Dorsey's tenure that coincided with Knox leaving and going in injured reserve. I think that's the best course for them. Now, I don't think they should or certainly will not mitigate Knox, who usually plays 80-90% of the snaps, down to a 30% guy.
Right.
But but then you're taking Dalton Kincaid off the field. So this is honestly going to be the biggest test to date for Joe Brady in the early portion of his tenure as interim offensive coordinator is how do you incorporate bringing Knox into the mix, because I know he has drop issues at times. I think he's a solid player that in himself can be presented as a mismatch that the Bills offense could utilize.
You know, when I think of Knox, and again, this is going to be a tough decision for the Bills to make. I by no means would even offer an opinion on what I think. Like, I just can't, because of the upside Knox brings. I mean, you think of some of those games against the Chiefs and some of the playoff games that they had. The Patriots game in the playoffs jumps out to me, where Josh Allen has a relationship with Dawson Knox where he knows if he gets the ball near him in big moments, and again, he's had some drops, but I don't recall Knox having a drop at a point where it really mattered. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
There was a late, and it was not a good throw from Josh, but he got his hands under it in one of these close games they lost. I think it was a home game.
Yeah. But I don't know. Such a decision to be made. I think you can still give both Knox and Kincaid a decent amount of run and run some of them out there at the same time as well. But the main formula has got to be keeping Shakir in the mix, if you're asking me.
And the other element goes before the steps of how do you incorporate Knox into the game plan and on the field? How does he fit onto the roster? Who is the person whose spot that he takes for being on injured reserve? So many of these injuries and putting guys on IR and stuff, it's one guy goes down, another guy comes back, so they've been able to kind of navigate things that way. They only have two healthy tight ends, so Quentin Morris is someone, if they just did tight end for tight end, I don't think they want to cut Quentin Morris. I heard someone mention maybe Ty Johnson, but then you would only be down to two running backs, and that would also probably make it so you have no path really for Leonard Fournette unless he was elevated.
Hardy.
That could be it. I'm just looking down here. Poona Ford, but I mean they're paying money for these guys.
Right.
Maybe AJ Klein has been a healthy scratch often. He's maybe a guy you could put on the practice squad. So it's all right. We'll cut AJ Klein to get Dawson Knox back on the active roster, and we can call him up because they don't have any linebackers currently on the practice squad. So that's just a thought. That's a decision Brandon Beane is going to have to make before the decision Joe Brady is going to have to make as to how to incorporate it. But I think we would agree you don't want to give less opportunity, certainly to Dalton Kincaid, and you don't want to drastically limit the opportunities that Khalil Shakir has been given and taken advantage of.
What you want to do is win 5 games in a row and put yourself in position to get into the postseason. John, we'll go to the game off of BetMGM. I added a little twist to this one today. Bills getting 1.5 points in this game. I think the Bills are winning, so.
So you're taking it. Okay, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
You think they're winning. I'm so torn because when I play how this season's going to ultimately play out, I kind of have them. They win in Kansas City. They lose to Dallas. Then, like, something weird will happen at the Christmas game in L.A. They'll lose. Their season will be dashed, and then they'll beat New England and Miami and fall a game short. But then I just also have a tough time believing this team can win a game against a tough opponent like this. I just they haven't done it. Outside of Miami in October, this part of this team. So I'm not going to take it.
If you're a guy who believes in momentum, John, And I know that's kind of poo-pooed lately, believing in that. I think what they were able to do against the Jets and against the Eagles, I think they're in a good spot right now. I think the Chiefs might be in a bit of a funk. So that's why I think this is all coming in at the right time for the Bills. Over under 48.5 points. I just don't trust the over in this league ever. I've been burnt by it on a number of occasions. But, I mean, I think I'm looking at the over because I think I'm looking at something like 31-28 Bills end up winning.
I'm going to take the under. Kansas City's offense is struggling. I don't trust their weapons. I do think Kansas City's defense is good. I think the Bills will get some. I think it'll be a fine game. But also, how often, outside of 13 seconds, have these games ever lived up to this, oh, Mahomes and Allen are going to have a shootout with each other? It just doesn't happen because either the Bills' defense is strong and somewhat contains Mahomes in the offense, or the Bills' offense just poo-poos and doesn't come to play. I have Kansas City winning 24-21. Another one of these, a play here, a play there. You look back, and when you dissect the season in January when we're all at home watching everyone else, you say, well, this week one, they could have done this if the punt return didn't happen, if Allen didn't throw 3 interceptions. Then you could all the way roll it, up to week 14 and say, well, if this didn't happen, they would have won. So I'm going to go 24-21. The Bills, I'm going back to my stance. The Bills have to show me they could beat good teams in close games before I'm going to feel confident enough this season to pick them.
I'm with you. They're on the precipice right now. John, I threw in a prop bet just because I was sitting around here and I'm like, what would be a good prop bet? I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs over a touchdown and a half. I think he gets 2 touchdowns in this game, if you're a guy who does the prop bets.
What is it again? Sorry, I wasn't listening. I'll actually admit that one. Usually I try to skirt my way around it.
Prop bet, when you're scrolling around.
I know what a prop bet is. Just tell me what you said.
So just pick, I say Stephon Diggs over a touchdown and a half. He gets 2 touchdowns in the game.
It's not bad. I'm not taking that prop bet. I'm more of the yards type prop bet guy.
That's fair. I will never, ever do again first touchdown, last touchdown. Maybe last touchdown I'll do again, but over Thanksgiving I did a first guy to score a touchdown. It was a long shot, only put $2 on it. But, the second the first touchdown scored, it's not your guy, you lost.
Anytime touchdown is good, especially if you're including it into a parlay. I hit in the first half a Derrick Henry rushing yards during the bye week. That was a nice little hit.
That's always nice, always fun. 3 and out, John, before we go. Former NFL quarterback David Carr on the NFL Network says that the Eagles should bench Hurts and put in Marcus Mariota because Hurts is not 100% right now, and Mariota would give them a better chance at winning a Super Bowl.
He said right now. He was saying bench, not
correct.
Bench. He sits Jalen Hurts to allow him to get healthy because his dual threat ability is not the level it should be because he's battling, a knee injury or something?
Yeah.
It was idiotic.
It is, right? I really thought you were just going to go the other way by the way you explained it.
It's idiotic. Jalen Hurts is an MVP caliber player. Have we not seen what Marcus Mariota is over the, 10 years since he's been in the league? Stop it.
Right.
He's a good backup. He's actually a backup I wanted the Bills to get because I'm like, this guy, he's mobile even though he's a little older. He's a guy that I would feel confident in spot start situations, and Philadelphia probably does. But what in the world?
Patrick Mahomes injures his ankle before the Super Bowl. Would you even imagine Andy Reid going, well, Patrick Mahomes' ankle is injured? I don't even know who the backup for the Chiefs is now or was for the Super Bowl. I woke up this morning to that. I considered it pretty asinine, so I figured I'd throw that out there. Here's one that's a little fun, John. Okay, so here we go. It's Thursday night. Sabres are at the Bruins, and the Patriots are at the Steelers. Which game has more points in it? Straight up points.
So the over-under for that game is 30 for the Steelers and Patriots, which
Right.
I think is one of the lowest over-unders ever or in quite some time. We've all seen these teams. They stink.
Offense blows.
Yes. But guess what? The Sabres stink.
Okay, but the Bruins can put up points. And the Sabres have the knack to get behind and kind of come back. So I'm throwing this at you. Bruins 5, Sabres 3, Patriots win with just one touchdown, and it comes on defense with 7. More points, 8 points in the Bruins-Sabres game.
A fun prop would be which game has more scores. A score could count as a field goal.
But I wanted to go point.
No, I understand what you're doing. More realistically, though, I think you could get to which game has more scores.
Have you seen the Patriots offense, and the Steelers now have Trubisky as their starter?
Who's just as good, if not better, than Kenny Pickett.
Who the Patriots basically defensively shut down the Chargers.
In the pouring rain and crappy conditions.
Well, I'm not a weatherman. I don't know what
we know you aren't. You want to play golf in the worst idiotic conditions.
John Taylor Swift, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Sounds right. I don't know who else to put as Person of the Year other than Taylor Swift right now. If you look at the whole picture of what's going on around the world right now, I don't think there's any other option. I can't fight that.
I mean, her tour remains the event of the year in the world. Sold out. I mean, it's just, people that I know that are like my age, almost 40, calling it like almost like a religious experience. She plays for 3 hours, which I don't care if you like her music or not. You pay good money to go to a concert, and that artist plays for 3 hours and just blows through everything that you love about them.
That's great.
My hat's off to him. Like, everyone should do that, right? I mean, if we went and saw Pearl Jam or the Foo Fighters, and you like U2, I could do that.
I don't like U2. I've seen U2, but I mean...
But Pearl Jam and the Foo Fighters...
I'm more 90s guys, Foo Fighters.
If they came out and Dave Grohl's like, we're going to get after it for the next 3 hours...
Oof. Dude, you think of that song catalog sitting there for 3 hours? Heck yeah. I don't care if I've seen them 5 times.
I'm good with it. And also, you just take that away, and then, like, I know people make fun of it, and, maybe I'll have a first row seat for it this weekend, is she really has then crossed over this whole phenomenon. My niece is 13 years old. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan. I'm like, do you watch football now because of it? She goes, yes. It's incredible. People make fun of it. The power of the Swifties.
Ready to be blown away? Suggestion in the newsroom today. Fred Jackson, unfortunately, has obligations. He will not be joining us for the postgame show. Former Bills running back. Since I'll be flying solo, to have a Taylor Swift reaction segment in our Bills postgame show, because it would draw more eyes to the show that I'm talking about Taylor Swift and not the Bills Chiefs.
No.
That's what I said.
No.
I mean, what are you, crazy? I mean, I get it. I don't care about the whole Taylor Swift NFL Kelsey thing, but let's get real, John. Let's be real about the whole thing.
Get real.
Buffalo End Zone postgame show coming your way after the Bills at Chiefs game on Sunday evening. And then after that, John and I will be right back here with a fresh Buffalo End Zone podcast. As always, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you down the road.